Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and I'm letting you know right up front that we are having some connectivity issues. So I want to apologize up front if we are starting to starting to have some uh some some issues there. And I'd like to say that one of our co-hosts here, Wayne, has inspired me about a situation. We I think we kind of had a little bit of a conflict the other day, and it actually inspired me a lot, and I think Wayne would like this. We'll get into it a little bit later. Um, I don't mean us getting into it a little bit later, but the thing that inspired me, and so I'd really like to express it. I think you'd have some fun with it too. Um, you didn't do anything bad. What? No, 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 no. What I love is we didn't have enough time to get into to allow you to express what you were trying to say. And I appreciate um the idea that this is a forum where, I mean, it's always coached in tabletop role playing games, but oh, no, 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 you're fine. But I love, like, debate and back and forth, and I thought there was this nugget of, like, goodness in there, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta go. I can't sit and stay." And, that's what I love about the reason why I do the live streams rather than doing, like, talking head videos and things like that. Alright, so today going on, continuing with our world building and kind of going back in history a little bit. I thought we would talk about uh, some of the ways that we some of the ways that we do world building, and especially old school style, and some newer games that kind of take um modern game philosophy and, like, narrativeness, and then kind of superimpose it in old school. So one of the the mechanisms in world building is something called points of interest. I'm stealing this term from Sly Flourish, but it's been used other places, and it's points of interest. And one of the main old school, the OSR ways of designing things are points of interest. And what I mean about it, oh no, oh Wayne, oh, you don't, shit, you didn't gotta apologize to me. Yeah, Wayne said, I'm passionate about humanity. I love everyone. Apologies for getting a bit deep yesterday. Yeah, we all get deep, and we're kind of like, we. How do I explain this? For those who are, like, brand new into the role playing sphere, it allows us to express ourselves, especially things that we're passionate about, in a world, as if to say, like, in a my deepest fears, my greatest frustrations, my dreams into nirvana and what a utopia would be. Here's what it would look like, and then we get a place to create that, and I think it's kind of cool. Yeah, Wayne says the Lazy DM is a fantastic book. Sly did the hobby good. I don't have any materials from him, which is strange because, like, I'm dedicated to his channel, so I don't know why I haven't, like, taken the next step. So maybe I will. And the reason why I love the Sly Flourish channel. By the way, go, not that I need to promote his channel, but go, like, share, subscribe, go to the channel, buy his materials, whatever. And why I like him is because he's kind of picked his niche and was like, you know what, we've got a lot of complicated, like, bullshit out there. Here's a cheap, easy, let's break this down into its smallest form way of doing a thing. And while it's not for everyone, and he admits it's not for everyone, I appreciate someone that's going, you know what, I'm over in my corner, and if you like what I do, participate in it. And um, his idea of points of interest goes back to an OSR philosophy, where in Dungeons and Dragons we had things known as modules. Now, I know today the word modules isn't quite the same, doesn't mean quite the same thing, but modules in the old days in the OSR, you would purchased them, and they weren't very big. They were maybe from 10 pages to 30 pages, and they were like a small little adventure. And and the vast majority of them, you could drop them in any world that you had. Now, some of them were written for specific settings. I'm here on Wikipedia, and they talk about some of the adventures. Like, for example, it says in a module in Dungeons and Dragons is an adventure published by TSR at least at that time. The term is usually applied to adventures published for all Dungeons and Dragons games before third edition. For third edition and beyond, new publisher Wizards of the Coast uses the term adventure, and this is where we hear the term adventure or adventure path, and they stopped using module. But for me, the difference between module and adventure was that a module was like a drop and play. You could drop this in any unknown part of your map, in your world, or whatever. But anyway, it goes on to describe that for description and history of adventures and modules, um, go to Adventure D&D, and it goes on to say adventures for various campaign settings are listed in different articles, including Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, Greyhawk, Mystara, Karator, Spelljammer, Ravenloft, Al-Qadim, Darksun, Planescape, Birthright, and Eberron. And this is kind of a slight bit of history. This was kind of like the downfall of the siloing of gaming when they started making adventures for specific settings, like the ones I just mentioned: Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, Greyhawk, Eberron, etc., as opposed to modules, which tended to be tangentially related to where you could drop them in. For example, I've got a video on a channel about a review for Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. The Barrier Peaks were a specific mountain range in Greyhawk, but it didn't really matter. It was just like, oh, here's a strange thing. A star fell from the sky. Players go to investigate in the mountains. You could drop that in any world that has mountains in it, or it doesn't even need to be in mountains. It's just over the river and through the woods to the adventure we go. And here on Wikipedia, we have a list of these modules. And in going back to Sly Flourish about points of interest, all of these modules were basically just points of interest. They were a point on a map where a strange thing was happening. You go into the dungeon, you explore the dungeon, you get the hell back out. And many of them, while they did have some exterior or greater ramifications in the region, for the most part, they were crypts, castles, a hole in the ground, like a dark castle. It wasn't like an entire continent or something. And now, mind you, some of these were islands and things, but again, you could pick and choose and move them just about anywhere. And that's where the idea, the OSR idea of the dungeon, air quotes, came about, because you needed to have, the module needed to be confined. You really didn't want to start layering things on top of other people's, other creators' worlds and affecting them. So you needed to have some kind of, like, we needed to have guardrails. And so they designed a lot of these with guardrails in. And of course, you can't assume everything. So when when the writers design these modules, they were pretty interesting bits of things. Like, for example, I'm coming down here for Earthshaker. Let's see if I can get an image of here. See if we. I apologize. Wow. No, that's not working. I'm trying to get this. No, that's. I'll get out of here. All right, so let's see. Wayne says, Wayne says, somehow Sly Flourish is not really for me. Every time I watch a video from him, I find me disagreeing with him. Really? Okay. He's like Professor Dungeon Master. I get it, though. I do get it. Keep it simple. Less crunch is faster, more exciting. I used to DM much like that. Nods to the Professor's channel, which I'm a devotee as well. Yeah, Drew says perhaps you'd like the complex, chunky play. Nothing wrong with that. Plots on a hex for players to discover as they explore the world. That's exactly right. These modules were designed basically like it was like a plug and play. Like if assuming that your entire map was hex based, you basically take a hex, put something in it, and you're done. And you could spread some rumors around, and there was always a reason why what was ever in it didn't get out. Like it was an ancient curse, and suddenly the ritual's broken, or it was an alien starship, and suddenly one of the portals that opened up, such as what happened in the expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Some were portals to other worlds, and so it was bigger on the inside than the outside. So, or it was a portal to like the Feywild or the Dark Realm or something. Um, in The undead started to rise, or maybe even some evil entity with plans of their own went to a place, caused some havoc, and now it's been exposed, and the PCs get there. So here's something newish brought back to something old-ish. And this is where I'm here on the main page, not main page. I'm here on Blades in the Dark. It's one line. The rules are it's actually an SRD that anyone can take from. So I'm really surprised more people haven't tried to hack Blades in the Dark, which is a hack of, I think, Apocalypse World. Um, Anyway, Blaze in the Dark has something that has been widely spread around known as progress clocks. And it there's nothing new about progress clocks except for the fact that though John Harper is a bit of a thesaurian wordsmith and has used lots of terminology to make things like become an earwig and stick around. And progress clocks are a way to advance the story if you have a sandbox. So you want to be a world builder, you have all these points of interest, you drop your players in it, and they've got their characters to navigate the world, and you fold your arms and go forth. What do you want to do? And progress clocks allow us to move the world when the players don't move in it. And so under progress clocks, of course, we have the different symbols and such, and they're sliced up into pies. And basically, you fill in or you go around the clock whenever an event has to happen over a period of time or certain circumstances meet together. For example, this 4-piece clock, um, large slices of pizza pie here, would mean that like you could time this into seasons: spring, summer, fall, winter, or you could time them into the number of crimes being committed by a criminal organization, or you could you could get a 6-point clock where a necromancer needs to gather the requisite victims to sacrifice to bring forth a vast army, or an 8-point clock with a again, an evil ritual to open up a portal to one of the fiendish planes and whatnot. And you could make these clocks anything from anything mundane. These clocks could be weather related. Uh, they can be environmentally related. From here in the United States, we get things like hurricane season, tornadoes, mudslides. Like you could do that. Forest fires, droughts. So that could also be political changes, whether in your world you wanted to have some kind of political upheaval, assassinations, someone important dies and leaves a power vacuum or something. And clocks are a way to do that. And what happens with the clocks, and these aren't, you don't need to hide these. This is something that the players can see. So, for example, in your desert region, you've got a blue dragon, and the players know there's a blue dragon that dominates the region. And then to the north, uh, there are frost giants, and they're winter wolves or something, and they're starting to come down into the warmer regions and start to whatever. And you could have these clocks, and the players, whatever direction they choose, things keep happening in the world, and you can progress the clocks. And the players may go, well, you know what? We don't need to deal with the blue dragon right now. It's an 8-point clock, But while they're up in the north dealing with the giants, things keep happening and keep progressing forward. And it's a way um, to visually represent tension in the world as things change. Now, all the things that change don't need to be dark and evil, because then there's too many plot hooks for players. But just having 2 to 3 options as what the players would like to do, and letting them know, like, hey, when you leave, if you just sit here twiddling your thumbs in the tavern, things keep going. So let me go back into see what you guys have to say. Drew says I like very narrative style of gaming, but the solutions Sly offers seem rarely fit my interests. I get that. I understand that. He's not for everybody. He's pretty much dominated his niche and done his thing, and which I'm like, okay, I have to respect that. Yeah, I'm of the belief that having seen things you've said, that playing in something you created would be a ton of fun. I agree. I agree with that with you, Wayne, because I think Drew's worlds seem personal. It would feel like it would be emotionally personal, and that's awesome. And I think in a way, the idea of clocks being old school is the idea that, listen, you don't have to go out adventuring and you don't have to grab onto the plot hooks, but if you don't, things are just going to probably get worse. And your player characters, your heroes, your opinion matters in this world, whether they are minor players or major players. And it's a way to reinforce to the players that this sandbox world that you wanted to be in, things are going to happen, and if you don't get involved, it's going to be the downfall of everything. Or if you when you do get involved, that means you're not getting involved in something else. And when it comes to world building, progress clocks from Blades in the Dark is it's one of the most popular things that people steal from other worlds. Now, if we go over to Apocalypse World with Fronts, it uses the same mechanism to keep the world going. And in this one, going off of uh, uh, Judenfuzz's narrative storytelling, that fronts are iconic individuals or movers or shakers in the world that players have a relationship with, and with sometimes random die rolls, the player's relationship with these important personages will impact what's happening. So they may have the player's relationship with this thing makes it personal to them. So they may have a relationship with a warlord or a wizard's cabal or assassins or ghostly ancestors or something. And then those fronts will have an impact in the setting, and the game master or dungeon master kind of finagles how it happens. It follows along a little bit of storytelling in that um there's a term, and I'm going to misquote it, but it's like when things get boring, someone busts the door open and starts shooting. In a way, it's like when the chips are down, or when you need a twist, the ninjas swing through the window and start attacking, and then the story progresses and goes like, well, where'd the ninjas come from, and what do they have to do with it? um uh, uh, in the movie Inception, um the Dream Warriors, the Dream Heist, where Leonardo DiCaprio and his dream heisters go into the mind of a person while they're dreaming, and Leonardo DiCaprio brings with him his own baggage, and so he's got a lot of guilt from his wife who passed away, through a kind of his own fault, and so she has an impact in the story. And then at one point, very dramatically, he's got this image of this freight train, and the freight train comes plowing through the city, middle of the city, and it's like, yeah, it made it very personal, and I think that's a good example of a front. So anyway, Apocalypse World fronts are basically a set of linked threats that the what they call the MC writes down with countdown clocks and stakes questions as a means to A, give them interesting things to say that aren't just improvised from scratch, and B, address one of the principles of Apocalypse World, which is sometimes um, disclaimed decision making. And it goes into each front has a fundamental scarcity chosen from a list of eight, such as hunger, thirst, envy, ambition, fear, ignorance, decay, and despair. And the relationship with the front means that they're kind of like they, they desire it desires something, like having a hunger or thirst or envy, or it's afraid or ignorant of something or some kind of knowledge, or it is slowly being destroyed, or it's saddened and suffering from despair. And what that means is maybe a player character came they had a relationship with, or even have blood related to a fiendish being from the netherworld, and randomly through the story they arrive, and then there's a reason why there are fiends in the world and what's happening. Now, this isn't necessarily a point of interest, but it could be when the players arrive in a small town and suddenly a shape changed fiend shows up that's part of a character's past, modifying the story. And so now you have in world building, it's not world building through geography, north, south, east, west. It's world building through um, um, e- player background and emotional context. So if the player leaves the small town, does the fiend stay behind? Do they try to eliminate the threat? Is it a threat at all? Is this person related to the player character? And it gives them a little bit of a conundrum, which could modify what the hell they were doing in the town in the first place, such as uncovering a crypt deep down in the bowels of the town, and the town was built over top of it. And there's the problem of, oh, there's a shape changed fiend that's a spy in the town, and do we want to let that fiendish being know what's going on? And does the player character keep it secret from the other player characters, their allies? And if they do tell them, are they into letting the um letting the player characters uh in on what's going on, and go along with them if they say, "Hey, we should kill this fiendish being." What like it starts to create its own storyline, and that's just a character that might have a relationship that way. This character could have a relationship with nobility, or have stolen something from a very powerful individual, or should have been maybe they were betrothed to someone, and there's a noble looking for this individual to bring back and say, hey, you made a promise to marry my you know one of my children, and you didn't do it, and so on and so forth. It creates this big story, and I like that. Oh man, let's see. Let's see. When he says, problem with coming here for conversation is DBJ has me opening tabs and browsing, reading excitedly too much info at once. Love this. I've never heard of these tools or methods. Feeds my ADHD. Yeah, yeah. So funny. I was thinking the same thing there. Wayne's like, I have a mind of a squirrel. Oh, anyway, what were we talking about? Yeah. Yeah. So you're related to Foamy? Yeah. TA says, I read that as there was a scarcity of hunger, thirst, envy, ambition, fear, ignorance, decay, and despair, i.e., they live in a utopia without any of these things, and it has driven the people there mad. Is that how you? Well, okay. I like the way of reading that as well. Sorry, let me pop that back in here since you brought that up. Sorry about that. Anyway, I like to bring up things, and no one wants like to look at my face, so I like to bring up other people's brilliance and talk about it here. Um, your TA says that they lack purpose to exist because everything they could need to do is already done. Okay, all right. Having maybe especially if the player characters are um understand that there's a balance and maybe there are other entities causing that imbalance, and the player characters are there to create the balance back again, like, talking about, hunger, thirst, envy, etc. Anyway, this goes on to say the Apocalypse World rulebook has almost nothing to say about the purpose of this, and it's talking about fundamental scarcity and this person's opinion about it in his blog post. Um, Under linked threats, this person mentions that the whole point of having a front is to add value to what a list of individual threats would achieve. The example in the book doesn't help us here. We have this mudfish parasite, which is infecting everyone, the wild waiters who carry it, and some bunch of thugs who enforce quarantine. These all seem highly linked and could be called the mudfish parasite front. And it's just talking about, like, essentially, it's just trying to mechanize or give words to, hey, player characters to the north, there's a great winter storm that's been predicted through an almanac, and everyone is battening down the hatches because of a great storm. But following this storm are giant hordes that are coming down south, right? And you could make that a very short phrase or something, winter storm and giants, and make that a front. And then as the players adventure around nowhere near the north, it begins getting worse because whatever's happening keeps, like the clock idea, or actually because clocks actually came after this because it was built off of the system. So that's why they are intrinsically linked, that a thing keeps happening. Now, mind you, you don't have to use the word clocks. You can use timers, or I like to use tension and pressure as a world builder, not necessarily in game. But it's like, if your players are in a sandbox world and they're going to these different points of interest, when they go to one point of interest, they are ignoring other points of interest. And mind you, these could be gated behind tiers of adventure. Like, I know the players are in the south. The adventure that I have planned for the north is getting worse because I know they're not ready to go there because they're only like second level. This is like kind of, I designed as like eighth level ish. So by the time they travel from the south to the north, I should have enough points of interest for them to encounter things that they will be of appropriate skill level or something like that to go north. You know, um, yeah. Let's see. This person says the dark future. Every front has a dark future, which is what will happen if it is allowed to roll forward undisturbed. This is useful as a check for the MC. Is this front really threatening, or have I created a situation the PCs can ignore? It could provide useful fodder for improvising too. Um, and then countdown clocks. Yep, countdown clocks are introduced as a thing related to fronts, but in actuality, the book recommends they be attached to threats. Regardless, they're probably quite closely oriented to the dark future, or should be. Again, the example front lets us down here. They serve to provide a concrete sense of the factors that build up to the dark future. And triggers, says this isn't in the front rules, but it should be. The book says the countdown clocks are descriptive and prescriptive, meaning if I get to 9 o'clock, then the mudfish parasite eats my head. But equally, if for some reason the mudfish parasite should eat my head, then the clock automatically advances to 9 o'clock. All well and good, and this serves to avoid the clock becoming divorced from reality. But we're still left with a clock that, absent the mudfish parasite eating my head of its own accord, ticks forward on the MC's whim. And I think what you're trying to say here is, like, you don't have to have a countdown clock that just keeps going um intrinsically forward. Maybe the players cause a thing, or there's a trigger of a thing that maybe either causes the clock to stop or rewind because of something. So if the players are down south, but they send word to the north because they're to their family and friends, and then word spreads, they send it to family and friends and say, hey, listen, beware, batten down the hatches, winter is coming, and oh, by the way, the frost giant hordes are there, let everybody know to run. Then the players might, purposefully or accidentally change a thing. So, yep. I think it's just a mechanization of a thing that lets us know that you can put in front of the players and go, "Hey, listen, things might change." So, um, maybe there's a way to balance it. And again, I don't believe that we should have too many dangling hooks because then it just confuses the player characters and then they start wandering around randomly. But whatever. Okay, you guys are talking here. Let's get back into what you have to say. Mm-mm-mm. The Yan King says, no idea what Black Armada is, but I watched Master and Commander yesterday. But what an excellent movie. Master Commander, and if you're into nautical um IPs, take a look at Black Flag. Try to find out where Black Flag is playing. On a streaming service. I think it was 3 seasons, maybe four, about piracy and privateers in the Caribbean islands. It's a pretty good show. It was the nautical piracy Game of Thrones ish for its time. It did get a lot of attention though. Mm-mm-mm. Let's see what you say. Yeah, Thomas Ayers says dark future, like ours, if we continue on the path we are on with rockets and such being our primary focus rather than manufacturing tech and replicator tech. But then Elon failed to automate his Tesla factories too. Yeah, and had to bring in humans to do the work after all. So can't expect him to take on an even greater challenge of developing replicators. Instead, he turned to rockets. Someone else do the work of making the rockets, designing them. Yeah, yeah. TA is our resident techie here and a futurist. I want to say, uh, if that is a good descriptor, and yeah, yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Well, not necessarily. Okay, okay. Since you guys went off on this, this is a perfect example of what we're talking about with like points of interest and such. What if there it let's make this fantasy. What if there's someone in a fantasy world who is brilliant, little eccentric, maybe not very popular, but has these bright ideas and brings is bringing in more science into a fantasy world. That makes if the player characters aren't involved in that, that could start to change maybe how society's progressing, or maybe there are factions that want to steal some of this technology, like maybe they are an extremely good alchemist or chemist or something, and creating things like explosives or dirigibles or ornithopters or anything like that. And who's to say that a kingdom starts having an air force with aeronauts in you know hot air balloons and glider wings and things like that, and the PCs come back and they're like, what the hell's going on here, as they see cable cars strung across the mountainous valleys, and people are using people movers and stuff and whatnot, and there's like golems and warforged walking around and whatnot, and the PCs are like, damn, we've only been going a couple years, what the hell happened here? Yeah. And so that really could be a thing. That's the idea of the clocks and the fronts and things happening um where the PCs are or are not involved in it. And that might be a thing. Maybe this person, or I don't know, gnomish genius or something, gets kidnapped and the PCs don't do anything about it. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah. I do agree with that. Yeah, when he says, imagine our government actually cared enough to want to bring us into the future. So much wasted energy on maintaining the status quo. There's a lot of that. There's I mean, reality wise, and we could take that into fantasy, but we used to, what was it, back in the 60s and 70s, talking about like going to the moon and exploring the inner and outer workings of our world, diving down deep into our oceans, going out into space and whatnot. Like we've got the James Webb Telescope out there, and we don't get as much attention on it. The Yankee says bringing science into a fantasy world like Ichabod Crane from Sleepy Hollow, although maybe that was an inversion with the Horsemen bringing fantasy and the science. Maybe that that was kind of like that. Um, TA says a fantasy realm ruled by magic, that technology is springing up and eating away at the ability of magic, making technology and science a sort of plague or cancer to the magic of the realm. That's a possibility. The two may not be able to mix. Could be science is the reason for that dead god, yeah, being dead after all, really, because it was stealing away the essence of belief that enabled the god to exist. Yeah, maybe that's why they've died off, right? No belief in them when I've got technology to help me out. Don't need you. Yeah, Wayne goes talks about today, like we could have free energy by now. Yeah, clean energy, not controlled by for profit. Same with food. Yeah, top end medical for everyone. So sometimes things we don't focus on make me sad. I'm an armchair futurist myself. That's why I'm a big proponent of like some of the tenets of like post-human technology. Um, transhuman technology where some of the things that we have conflict with today could disappear simply through scientific development. So, and I guess I fall positive because people are assholes, but yeah. When he says Googled Black Armada and found cars and watches, where did where? Okay, here we go. Let's. I'll copy and paste this in the link and see if it helps you out there, um, for a link. Let's see. Yeah, Wayne says in the '70s we were convinced of an impending moon colony. Yeah, we get to the moon and just stop. Like why? We could have moon colonies already. Yeah, the Enkings is like have rusted tram lines running through village squares, have old inert electric lampposts that villagers now hang torches and lanterns from, have the sunblade be explicitly high tech. That's a great idea. I like that a lot. Maybe the player characters have to bring this lost technology back, maybe. Um i i still have in my head a OSR Morkborg-esque setting simply called Merca, which is like the industrialization of the United States, but like make it writ large, like with oil and oil, coal. As a matter of fact, the stats in the game would be oil, coal, rail, gold, and I can't remember the last one. Ranch. And it's like existing. It's a fantasy version of the establishment of the 13 colonies and going across the United States. The people who used to be here have disappeared, and the player characters are trying to survive in this like you, you know neo-capitalist society and such. And I thought that would be kind of cool. Yeah, you got yeah. Maintain the status quo is like busy work. What was it? Oh, there's like all kinds of like videos out there talking about the 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 work society of like bullshit jobs that are just jobs just to ensure that there are other jobs. Yeah, back in the '70s, where we were convinced we'd all die in a nuclear winter. Yeah, there was nuclear hell. There was a movie called The Day After. Let me see if I could find this. The Day After television film, and let's see if I could share this. And let's see, The Day After. Um, 83. There it is. The Day After is an American television film that aired on November 20, 1983 on the ABC television network. More than 100 million people in nearly 39 million households watched the film during its initial broadcast. The film was the seventh and highest rated non sports show until then, and it set a record as the highest rated television film in history, which it held as of 2009. It postulates a fictional war between NATO forces and the Warsaw Pact over Germany that rapidly escalates into a full scale nuclear exchange between the United States and the Soviet Union. The action itself focuses on the residents of Lawrence, Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri, and several family farms near American missile silos. Yep. And it was like um a television movie about people living in the world after a nuclear war, and it was pretty horrible. And it was a big wake up call for us at that time, for those of us that remember it, in 1983. You guys are techies. Wayne says, "I remember it." Okay, all right. That means you're. That means of course, we are all here. We're graybeards over here, so yes. But yeah, it was a thing that was a big part of our social consciousness at the time, right? About nuclear war and things like that. Oh yeah, and the End Kings. Like, yeah, I picked the Black Armada. Yeah. TA says they refused to let us watch that at the boys' home I was in at the time. Really? Wow. Yeah, and it wasn't high action. This was not a movie that was high action. It was basically um people dying slowly from like radiation and cancer and stuff. It was horrible. It was like it was a drama television movie about basically people like vomiting and losing their hair, and food started getting scarce, and the and electric grid goes down. Yeah, NATO airbursts three tactical nuclear weapons over advancing Soviet forces, hoping to halt the Soviet invasion. In response, the Soviet nuclear attack destroys the regional NATO headquarters. Minutes apart, the United States launches its Minuteman missiles and personnel aboard an EC 135 Looking Glass over Kansas, track inbound Soviet ICBMs. The film deliberately leaves unclear who fired first. Shortly before the ICBMs arrive, a high altitude nuclear explosion over the central United States generates an EMP that disables vehicles and destroys the electric grid across the region. The nuclear strikes then commence as the ICBMs strike their targets. Kansas City and the surrounding military bases and missile silos are destroyed by the nuclear missiles. Characters Marilyn and Bruce are incinerated. The Hendricks, having initially ignored the crisis, never make it out of their yard. A nuclear detonation flash blinds the a young Danny Dahlberg when he looks at it. Oakes witnesses an explosion over Kansas City, walks to Lawrence, takes charge, and begins treating patients. Klein, these are another character who had hitchhiked as far as Harrisonville, finds the Dahlberg home and begs for protection in the family's basement. There's also another show called Jericho that kind of deals with that, where a nuclear bombs go off in the United States, um, and do their thing. Jericho TV series. Let's see. Post-apocalyptic drama. Anyway, let's get back to what you guys have to say, and then get back into this. Wayne says, "I was born in '62. I'm a great chin for sure." Yeah, yeah. TA says, "Funny thing is, we are seeing a giant coming cosmic event that has happened previously in cycles too. Could be why we have not developed and used tech that wiped us out. I would hope there's something that doesn't happen to help us wipe us out." Um, I heard that they found something out where Planet X should be, with the um, J West telescope. TA says they've gotten better about the mockumentaries. Just look up Oil Storm, put out in 2005, and predicting almost step for step what would happen. Not even a month later, due to Katrina. Ooh, really? Really? I know there's another mockumentary out about like the oil crisis and such. Yeah, the Yankees says I didn't grow up worried about the nukes, but I know that Cabin in the Woods was inspired by the people who worked at a nuclear plant. Kind people with a gruesome job. Yep, yep, absolutely. So these are basically examples of like, hey, here's a thing that's going to happen, or is happening, or will be happening, or is currently happening, and going back to our progress clocks, and then eventually going back to the OSR. When you have a sandbox, sometimes the the intrinsic nature of having a sandbox is make a map, find points on the map, points of interest, and be done with it. But I will say that having the world move and change, um, like as players have characters, the world is our character as narrators and storytellers. And so having a precarious relationship with the nobility, and they are trying to assassinate each other, and an assassination goes through, and there's a power vacuum that one of the cousins wants to fill with an appointee, or a bastard child, or a hidden away lost loved one, or something like that coming to power. I think these things can be hooks for players to get part of. So it's not just a matter when someone says a sandbox doesn't. I believe it's untrue that a sandbox doesn't have a motivation. I think it behooves us to put motivations in there, to have stories happening, and then the players themselves navigate this sandbox in in the world. For example, some people think a sandbox is drop the players in the middle and let them run free. But a sandbox actually has, well, if we think of a real sandbox, it has borders. It's got toys in the middle, but it's a box. And within that box, things could be happening. Time changes. You got to stop for lunch. You could get sunburned. You might scrape your knee and things like that. Terrible analogy, but my point with that is, with having a living world, is if you're going to make a sandbox, have dynamic things happening in the sandbox, and just be careful of overloading your players with too many hooks. You know, two hooks, three hooks, maybe. A tripod is a pretty good thing, because if they go after one, there's two other things in the back of their mind that might be happening. And also, don't if they go towards the blue dragon, you don't need to keep reinforcing that they're missing out on something. But as they get to the end of the blue dragon thing, have emissaries from the deep north come down to the south into the desert, dressed in their uh, polar bear cloaks and whatnot, and it's just like, we need your help. And it's like, what are you doing here? Like, there's a crisis happening, and we blah blah blah. The player characters will go like, don't, we forgot, let's travel back up north, right? Something like that. Here we go. Ta talks about the mockumentaries and a transition point away from mockumentaries. Mm-mm-mm. Oh wow. Yeah, the transition point away from mockumentary was where the two ships crashed into each other, trying to rush oil to refineries deeper up the Mississippi River, which is a real thing. Thus, continuing things in the show, but in reality, that never happened. So we were able to put the brakes on the crisis thanks to nothing like that happening in real life. In the show, it ended with $8 to $10 a gallon gas prices because the stores ran out of gas and shut down, leaving the last price it was at before things got really bad. Something like that kind of did happen in the Suez Canal, so it kind of predicted it. The Yanking says 1 or 2 hooks. That's a nice fishing trip. 12 or more. That's becoming a Hellraiser movie. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. 12 or more hooks. That's a Hellraiser movie. Yeah. Because what you really don't want your players to do is like wander around aimlessly, or like or even worse, start throwing hand grenades into locked rooms and then running away, because sometimes players will do that, right? They'll go to the the ancient crypt and open up the front door, and you're like, great, I'm prepping for the ancient crypt. I've got so many levels and a bad guy in there, and the PCs go in the front door and they go, nah, never mind, and then they turn around and go somewhere else, and you're like, oh, where are you going now? We're going to the, I don't know, archipelagos in the whirlpool of the Dark Sea or something. And you go, great, I'm going to prep that. You prep that. The PCs are going, we're going to get a sailing ship and go out into the whirlpools. And you go in the whirlpools, and the PCs go, never mind. We're going to turn back. This is too dangerous. And you're going like, oh, we're going to go after the Blue Dragon. Great. Never mind. You don't want that to happen. That's a common thing that happens in like sci-fi, where players have a starship and then they go to planets and basically just start throwing hand grenades and then they leave. They're like, well, we've got a starship. We don't have to stick around for the end results of what we've done. Yeah, Wayne's like, it's correct. Sandbox does have borders. The world can have edges, or it can wrap around like a planet. The border can be thousands of leagues away in all directions. Exactly. As a matter of fact, you can run a sandbox in a city, like a city state. You could have a sandbox in a castle. You and what I mean by that is, with, let's say we do a castle, and the entire story takes place in a big giant mansion castle. Maybe there are gardens, there's stables, and the entire story is supposed to take place within a castle. So your points of interest could be the kitchen, the basement, the wine cellar, the hidden sewer system, the moat, the garden, the stables, right? The wizard's tower, the bedroom of the nobles or something. And those could be points of interest where the players can navigate around the castle grounds, but they just don't leave the castle. And the whole story could take place in the castle, and their conversations with people in the castle, and their conflicts with people. But where they go and what they do in it is up to them. And the same thing happens in a sandbox world. You can decide where you want to go, but the world's alive, and that tavern that you know and love could burn down because we have a countdown clock, because there are people who, I don't know, protesting that the local gnome that runs the local inn is in league with fiends or something, and they've had this belief in their head, and they're getting angrier and angrier. Now they're going to burn the place down, and the players are like, nah, that'll never happen, because the dungeon master would never destroy their own highly detailed inn. And then boom, they burn it, and then you burn it down, and the PCs are like, what? With the gnome, crawling towards the players, smoke inhalation. Save me! What have you done? You didn't help me, or something like that. TA says, what if you have a world that is the inside shell of a universe? So it seems like a giant, never-ending flat world, and stars are inside the shell, moving in circular orbits that give day-night cycles. Dyson sphere, anyone? Yeah, Dyson sphering. Um, Dyson. Let's do a. Let's see if I know. Star Trek has they had an episode of them going into an actual Dyson sphere, even though the designation, there it is. There's the image um, of one of version of the Enterprise going into being part of a Dyson sphere, but the actual theory of the Dyson sphere was actually a Dyson swarm, not an actual sphere. Because a Dyson swarm is the idea that society creates more and more and more solar collectors, space habitats, and we create so many that we fully utilize all the energy of our star, our sun, through the use of solar collectors and habitats and things like that. And so an actual solid sphere isn't a real thing, but whatever. Could humanity ever really build a Dyson sphere? It would probably be more like this image here. building a Dyson sphere around the sun would be easy if we use Jupiter for raw materials. We probably use Mercury first, but whatever. Yeah, to get out of that fantasy world to the world of science, you have to travel through the equivalent of the Hellraiser labyrinth. Ouch, ouch. You might not want to do that. Yeah, it would be fun if it were Emerald City of the Star Rigger by John DeChancy with non-Euclidean geometry. Ooh, the Star Rigger. I'm gonna look that up. Wayne's the Sandbox world players certainly can wander. I've had that happen. Makes one work on another thing, work more on something else. Have to love DMing to do that. Yeah. Well, here's your session zero conversation, right? If at the end of one session, the ancient crypt, players go, "Hey, let's go into the desert to deal with the blue dragon." I know I'm pulling that out of my ass. Keep using it again over and over again. But my point being is that have your players agree that if they plan on leaving the crypt to go deal with the blue dragon, that they're not going to change their mind, right? Because if you're going to waste your time, there's nothing worse than time wasting, unless you are a consummate suffering from world builder's disease, in which case you build the encounter with the blue dragon, but you just hold it off till later because they end up changing their mind anyway, and you didn't mind fleshing that out. But yeah, if they're going to go south, say like, listen, I'm a busy person. Make sure you're actually going to go south next game, and they go, okay. Yeah, looking for ancient civilizations in space around stars, knowing that to find Dyson spheres, they would be blocking the light except for the infrared light and heat from a star, and that's how we would find out if there are other Dyson spheres out in the world. Yep, yep, yep. Yep, that is what people are looking for as proof of ancient civilizations in space, hoping to find a signature of the heat from a star that is no other that there is no other evidence of the star except for the heat from it. Yeah, because you got to expend that heat, especially if you created a giant shell around a star, it would just heat up on the inside. Mm-mm-mm. Thing is, if they use something similar to the passive thermal diodes, they could capture and reuse energy even as it falls to the lowest possible entropy state. Then finding them is much harder. They could literally collect as much of the star's energy as we are now, but enable them to power a system with trillions of living sentients, if not more. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm a huge Isaac Arthur fan, and he talks about the fact that um, population mathematically we, the planet Earth could actually house trillions based on the technologies that we could create if we start building upwards and then we start making ecumacropolises or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce the word. Um, but yeah, if we start creating the ecumetropolises and stacking people on top of each other and building giant cities and things like that. Um, was that a PC game? Steam PC game? That's cool. Um, yeah, once we start doing things like that, then we could house trillions. We as humans think linearly, but actually we could probably house people exponentially, and because we've always had the the argument that hey, there's always going to be a population explosion, and we can't house all these people, but we keep doing it, right? Because we've got a lot of empty space on the Earth, and then if you go into space, you got other planets and habitats, and we could build more and things like that. So yeah, definitely true. Because if we build a Dyson sphere, or there is a Dyson sphere built around a star, you'd have trillions, if not more, land space, and that's just a single layer, and then it would just get even bigger than that. Here's another pretty good image here of constructing a Dyson sphere. See how we got the Dyson spheres from the OSR? Yeah, they could collect as much stars. Does their star ends up look like any other uninhabited star? Hmm. Hmm. The Yanking says, as time goes on, I'm less and less interested in sandboxes and West Marches. I think I like a theme park, an open space with lots of little rails and rides. Not, yeah, I've heard of the theme park, theme park methodology. I guess I should have done that. We'll do that tomorrow. Yes, the idea of a theme using a theme park to build a world is this idea that you have like an entry space into the world, and each when you go to a theme park, different parts of your theme park have like it has a descriptive entry. You go into it, it has rides, and when you leave, you can go to someplace else. I like that idea. I'm gonna bring that up. I'm gonna bring that up tomorrow. Yeah, you could travel to any attraction, but once you get in the cart, you're going on that ride until it finishes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have population explosions, but you also have a lots of death constantly. Yeah, we do. Arcology structures, I think, is what you were thinking about. Yes, but the 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 idea of not just arcologies, but let's see if acumen. See, that's not it. Not Acropolis. It's mm, it's oh Isaac Arthur brings it up plenty of times. Um it's not a mega city. It's not a Acropolis. It's not an arcology. Okay. You got me thinking Isaac. Let's see. Isaac Arthur's YouTube channel. Hmm. 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 Playlists. Let's see if I could find it. Nah, I can't find it. Maybe megastructures. It might be under megastructures. Fermi paradox, habitable planets. I can't find it. And he's got a word. There's an actual word for it too. Oh, I found it. I found it. There you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's share this tab instead. And let's get to the title of it. No, no, no. Anyway, it's sitting right here. Ecumenopolises. It's like planet-sized world. Cities that cover planets. There we go. Yeah. Ecumenopolises. Here it is. Planet spanning cities, homes to trillions. Ecumenopolises. I guess that's what it's called. Anyway, I hope I don't get dinged on that. Love Isaac's channel. I've listened to his Fermi Paradox playlist several times, and it keeps growing too. Right? It's like here's all the reasons why we haven't seen aliens, and you're like, oh shit, yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, it says TA says as Isaac Arthur points out too that that much energy with enough people, all of them turning on a single light, could fry the planet with the collective heat. But thermal harvesting solves that. Yeah, because the heat a to heat a light would generate is harvested from the amount of heat it would put out, so you end up with a thermal net neutral state. Yeah, because all the people create heat. It's much like it's what happens when we get a bunch of people into a theater that's cold because the AC's up real high. When all the people get in, it gets warm. Even our body heats bring create heat. So, and then we're burning energy because we eat and feed and turn on lights and we use machines and things like that. Yep. Thermal diodes. Seas that cover planets. The George Lucas approach. Yep. So Coruscant. Yep. Yes, it is. Deadman says Septerra Core, a game set on an artificial world with 7 or 8 rings inhabited. Septa Core. Septa Core. I'm going to look that up. Septerra Core. Septerra Core Legacy of the Creator? Is this what you're talking about? Hmm. Okay. All right. Um. Yeah. Wayne says, "Oh, that's right. Foundation. Yeah. Also, Foundation main world was a layers deep, and people never saw the sun. That's kind of cool world building in and of itself. All right, guys, I got to get out of here. So do you. I'm taking too much of your time, and I do this all the time when I do this. But I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I'm going to let you guys go to the more important things you have going on in your lives. I really appreciate you being here. We're going to continue our conversations and such. I think there's some things that I'm really trying. I'm being too much of a perfectionist, so I'm going to try to make some other things to draw some attention and do something new for the channel. But we'll see what happens. I'm hoping to just do it seat of the pants and then get better at it, and maybe we'll add some value to your lives. So, guys, have a great one. I will see you on the other side of the die roll. Thanks, guys. Have a great one. Peace.